Devin George is a North Minneapolis native, Augsburg University graduate, and MBA alum, having played for the Los Angeles Lakers, the Dallas Mavericks, and the Golden State Warriors. Devin is president and CEO of George Group North. He is a groundbreaking developer who is reinvesting in the Twin Cities with a commitment to shared prosperity and economic growth. Everyone, please welcome Devin George.
Well, first, thanks for having me, Tawana. I'm excited to be here to talk about a topic that I've really dove into since I stopped playing in the NBA. And I kind of jumped into this field kind of by accident. It was always a passion of mine to kind of get involved, and I didn't really see this as something I'd be doing post-playing, but I saw the need for it. And then once I got into it, I saw the many layers of issues and problems that we need to address. And one of the things that I realized is I was an influencer, and I didn't realize it until really I saw the power that we had over young kids as professional athletes. And I give a story. When I first got to the Lakers, we had a star-studded team with veterans such as Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, Rick Fox, and all those guys had commercials and kids and families. And you know, I was the youngest guy there and got involved in our community service work. So if any one of you ever watch a game, you see we're Reading to Achieve, we're at homes or hospitals, and we're in the communities. Those are mandatory events that the NBA says, hey, these people in these communities support you guys. It's mandatory 20, 25 events. You go out and get into these communities from someone from the team. So I was always volunteered by the veterans of saying, I'm busy, send Rook, he's going. And as I start to go in these communities in Los Angeles, in Watts, and South Central, and taking 30 minutes out of my day, which I had the rest of the day. We have practice at 10, by 12 I'm done, I'm free for the rest of the day. So taking 30 minutes out of my day to go read to some kids and read them a book, they'd be excited. A Laker came to their school, and during the question and answer part at the end, I always like to have the kids say, hey, anybody have any questions you want to ask me? How tall were you? How tall are you? And I always have a story that I tell my young kids that they always like to hear the story of me being short. I was short for a long time, and I just kept growing and growing, like over a couple summers. And they like to hear that because a lot of them might not be the tallest or the fastest or the strongest. And so I always make sure I mention that when I'm talking to the young kids. And one of the questions I kept getting, no matter what neighborhood I was in, was the kids would want to touch me. And they're like, can I touch you? Like, what do you mean? Can you touch? I just want to touch your arm. And I'm like, okay. And then put my arm out. They touch my arm. And then other kids, I want to touch. I want to see. They think we're not human beings because we have the ability to play basketball. And so at that point, it started clicking in my head. How about I use this to an advantage? How about I use this to try to tell some of these kids the right things to do? Try to put a message in their head, because we're influencers. There's a reason why you see NBA players selling soap, because people say, oh, he uses that soap, I'll use it. So I said, well, let me work with some kids, and I start to grow and like it. And at the time, I was sponsoring a program here called Why Can't I Go? And there were just so many things that blew my mind that I started to learn about kids in the community, because I lived in the community, my dad still lives in the community, but at the same time, we caught the bus, we went places, we got out of the neighborhood. I went to private schools from K through 12. That's why my parents decided to stay in the neighborhood, because they both worked 2 jobs, and they wanted to send me and my brothers to private schools. So they made that sacrifice. But some of the things that I would hear, the kids have never been to a Mall of America. And I'm like, how is that even possible? Like, you live in Minnesota. There's people flying all over the world to come to Minnesota. You can take one bus and get to Mall of America. And so at that point, I'm sponsoring about 20 kids every year to come to Los Angeles, see a game, and then I would take them to Disneyland, and then they would come back home. And those kids were that program was for kids that were doing good in school, their attendance, they were doing some community service, and they got rewarded with a trip to Los Angeles to meet some of the players, come on the court, go to Disneyland. Some of the letters that I received from the kids after was just mind-blowing. Like, they just couldn't understand that people care. This guy doesn't even know me. Why does he do this? What's wrong with him? Is he okay? Why is he sponsoring us to come out here? Why is he being nice to us? He doesn't even know us. And so finding out how those kids started progressing and started getting better just kind of kept adding on to me thinking, okay, I need to get back in the community. I need to get back in the community. And then the final touch was really in Dallas. I was playing. My girlfriend at the time came up to me after the game and said, hey, can you donate? Can you call your Nike rep and get some kids from the Buckner Foundation? I got this guy, Reverend Johnny Flowers. I have his card. These kids want some T-shirts and shoes. So I called my Nike rep and said, hey, can you send a box of shoes over to these kids, man? They had holy shirts and some of them shoes, weren't in good condition. Can you send them a box of stuff? My Nike rep sent it all to him. Reverend Johnny called me back and he said, hey, man, I want to show you something. Come on over to this community center over in South Dallas. I want to show you something. And if anybody here knows about South Dallas, the high income earners in South Dallas earn $12,000 a year. So you can kind of imagine what that neighborhood looks like. So I go over there, and he shows me these 8-plex units that he has on this compound, and he has units for homes. He has a church in one of the units. He converted one into like a therapy session where mothers that have been beaten and kids that have seen traumatic experience, they can go to. He had a food shelf in one. He had kind of a one-stop shop. And then when he was over there, he said, before you say anything, I know how it is with you and your profession. I don't want any money. I don't want any money from you. Can you just come in and show up every now and then? I said, absolutely. I'll come in after practice. I'll call him. Hey, I got some free time. I'm going to show up. He was like, come on. He said, by you coming, I'm luring all these kids in because they want to come in, say hi to you. They want to come in, have you read to them. They want to come in, have you help with their homework. He says, once I get them in here, I got them. So I just need you to get them in here to me once I get them in here. So I said, yes. So I got them in, and just seeing the kids, working with them, started working with some of the families that were there and seeing what one break can do for a family. He came to me at Christmas time and he said, hey, I got 5 families. They've been going to therapy. They're a young couple. They got kids. They just want something for their kids. They just want some Christmas. I said, well, let's get the whole family. He said that would be great. So we gave them, we donated and got the whole family, so they had a Christmas, and they took off from there. And then that's when it hit me. I own this land here in North Minneapolis, and this building. I said, why don't I do something like this where I'm from? Because no matter if you're in North Minneapolis, no matter if you're in South Dallas, where you're in Augusta, Georgia, wherever it is, there's a North Minneapolis in every state. And the same things that's needed there is needed here. So I had this, and I was always coming here, so a lot of friends that were in the summertime, I would come home. A lot of friends that were in education, social worker, they would always ask me again, hey man, can you come say hi to my kids? Can you come say hi to my kids? Start to develop a relationship with these guys and notice that where are the kids? I come back and, where is she at? Where's he at? And they're saying, well, they're homeless. They're staying at auntie's house tonight. They're staying at mom's boyfriend tomorrow. They're staying at grandma's tonight. They're missing school all week. And so I said, really, when I'm coming here talking to them about going to school and eating vegetables, is anybody really even listening to me when they're in survival mode? They're trying to figure out where they're going to live or where they're going to eat next. They're not listening to what I said. So I said, let me start my affordable housing. Let me start my nonprofit and have a house where I can have my nonprofit, where I can have families housed, where they can have stable housing, where I can really give them a message, where I can bring people in and give them a message, where I can bring people in and give them help so that they can kind of move on. And that's kind of how I got into being a developer, affordable developer. But I started off in market rate and doing luxury apartment buildings, and then I kind of got into this, and the satisfaction and the gratification I got from this is just really, I can't even explain it. And the last thing before I stop is this one building in North Minneapolis has went nationwide. you wouldn't believe how many football players, basketball players have been contacting me and wanting to come here and see the building, calling me, calling my agent, I need his number. Other players that I know sending me text messages, hey, Dev, call me, I need to talk to you, because players nowadays are really, really starting to wake up and understand, hey, I need to get back in these communities and help out my community that helped me out, helped me get to where I'm at. And so I've been really busy with kind of gathering guys and kind of showing them a blueprint of this difficult process to put affordable housing and to invest back in our communities where we can make money as well. So that's what I'm doing right now. But I'm more excited about really having a discussion on the issues that's going on, because there's a big obstacle that's out there, and that is really not letting people of color be included in a lot of these things and opportunities that are going on. And I really lucked out because there was one thing that kind of helped me break down a few of those doors, and I had some finances that I could kind of jump over and knock a few doors down because I had the finances. But if I didn't, I'd be in a world of trouble. And even with my finances, I'm still reminded, you're just a black guy with some finances at times. So that being said, we can open up for discussion.
Our panelists include Jamil Ford, who is president of MBA, and Aneela Kumar, who is the founder of HabitAware. Give them a round of applause. And for this one, I get to walk and sit down with you guys and actually ask you some questions. And I think the first one for everybody, and including myself, because after 6 years at MSP Airport and really doing what I love as art director, I saw a bigger picture. So I never thought I was an entrepreneur. When did you start thinking of yourselves as entrepreneurs?
So my name is Aneela. Thank you for having me here today. I grew up playing Office, so I think in my heart I always knew I wanted to be in the business world. But I studied accounting and business in undergrad, and then I left that field for more creative endeavors in graphic design and advertising agencies. And a friend of mine used the term accidental entrepreneur recently, and that sort of, while I was at the time working on a business idea, the impetus for HabitAware really stemmed from my own personal affliction with a mental health condition that I was hiding, and that by sort of being caught by that disorder, by that mental health issue, set my team on this journey to actually build a product that helped me overcome it and bring it into the world. So sort of this weird mix of, I always knew it was gonna happen for me, but I also needed the space to let it happen the right way.
So organically?
Organically.
Organically for everybody, or?
Organically?
Yeah.
Yes.
I would say so.
One of my personal experiences was, as a young person within the community, making money or spending money started from just showing up to the local market with turning in milk cartons or pop bottles at the time to feed off some of my needs for sugar at that particular time. But over time, it was like, how do we begin to go to the next level? So it started off with shoveling snow, raking leaves, doing some odd jobs around other people's residences. And that eventually led into some of my more passionate things, which was building clubhouses. And so as I was building these clubhouses, oftentimes I would go to a job trailer or a construction site where they had a dumpster. I'd take the old wood out of the trash container, bring it back to the fort or the clubhouse. And as I started doing that, I started thinking, okay, I know what I want to build. But then I started leveraging some other people from the community to go out and actually go and fetch some of the wood and bring that back while I'm still sort of conceptualizing what and how things were going to happen. And so that was some of the earlier grounds of starting to get that entrepreneurial aspect of moving things forward.
So how does it move from the aha moment to inclusion for everybody? I mean, and for something that's so specific that you were doing on your own, how did you get from that aha moment, Deva, to now I need these other people to be involved?
Just really the amount of work and understanding in affordable housing when you jump in is that, you know, the basic thing of affordable housing is, you know, in order to make it affordable, you can only charge a certain amount of rent. And the amount of rent that I can bring in can never pay a mortgage. So I have a huge gap. But financing it, it's a lot of laws and ways, and all money can't, you know, come together at the same time. You can, you know, some money grants that you get will cancel out the needs of others. So it's a very tricky process, and it's a long process and expensive. You have 12 to 14 different people that are putting in money in the project. So you have 12 to 14 different people that you have to make happy. They're putting in money with these conditions. I'm putting in money with this condition. So it gets very expensive, and then it has to go through everybody. Then the lawyers, they have to make all 14 people happy at closing. And then 10 are happy, 4 aren't. And then 12 are happy, 2 aren't. It just goes back and forth. We want to come in last. Well, we want to come in last too. Well, somebody's got to come in first. You know, so it's just a lot of balancing that you have to learn, and there's a lot of rules involved in it that there's no way I can say I know it. I have to call a consultant. But again, as a minority person wanting to get into development, if you don't have those funds to hire consultants or attorneys, there's no way you would know how to get these applications done. There's no way you would know the rules that make the money work. So that's one of the things.
So how do you make it happen? I mean, you're talking, I mean, just listening when you're saying it, it would make anybody who is not familiar with being an entrepreneur just kind of start backpedaling. It's like, I don't know, that sounds complicated. How do you get people to see the vision that you need clearly and make the financing happen for it to happen? And you talk about some of the obstacles that happen, and I'm sure they're greater for entrepreneurs of color because they don't have the information on how to get started. They have the idea, and they might have some people to back them up, but they don't have the necessary tools that they need in order to really make it happen. How do you get to there?
I think really collaboration in us as, you know, a minority of people of color need to come together to see what it is that you do well, what is it that I do well, and piggyback off that, so that the only thing that we have to worry about is really the financing, because that's usually the easier part for the most part, is the money part, but really figuring out who's in what lane. And, you know, me and Jamil grew up together. We grew up in North Minneapolis, and that was one of the first things that we did is like, we're gonna collaborate. You're an architect, and he had told me a lot of stories of like, you know, all of my projects, Jamil is gonna be a part of it. All of my larger projects, even if he can't take on the whole project, he's gonna have a space carved out in all of my projects. And the larger companies need to know that. But I had horror stories from him of like, I can't get work. I just keep getting, we'll get you on the next one. What about this one? Okay, we'll get you on the next one. And so that's what he was hearing all the time, and now that I'm able to get some of these projects going, so I think it's just really of us coming together, figuring out what do you do well, what do I do well, and then saying, okay, well, I'm in this lane, we have the package together, now we just need to find some money or financing.
What about you, Aneela? Because it's different for women, always, than it is for men and men of color. What were the obstacles that you faced?
Well, for us, you know, I believe that inclusion is a choice, right? On both sides of the table. As we're hiring, inclusion is a choice, and also as we look to investment partners and potential distribution partners, et cetera, it's a choice. And for us, we have faced barriers because we don't look like the typical med tech entrepreneurs. Our product doesn't even look like a med tech product, which puts us in this, we're kind of in this place where they don't know what box to put us in. And I think that's the same for a lot of us. It's this they want to make a judgment call, but they can't because they don't understand what we're about. And so it's up to us to try to knock through those close-knit networks that are there and try to either build our own, which is maybe, you know, working outside of that arena, but then how do you still knock on the door, right? So for us, we just started attending a lot of events. We started sharing our idea. And it was our earliest investors are the ones that believed in the idea in a hot minute. Like, we did not have to prove ourselves. There's this idea that you have to prove yourself before you are worthy of my check. And with all of our key investors, it was either they saw me speak or they saw one of our other founders speak, and they just understood the mission that we were trying to achieve, and they were on. Of course, they did their financial due diligence thereafter, but that was like a check on their gut versus the other way around. You know what I'm saying? So I think that we need to kind of lead a little bit more. Investors need to lead with that more, of saying, I believe in what they're doing versus looking at it from a business perspective. And I think they need to figure out when these business contracts are happening and you're getting told on the next one, those people need to check themselves and need to say, who are we leaving out of these conversations and why? And how do we get them there?
Jamil, you're nodding.
Yes, and so, here on both sides of me, I think when you really get down to, opportunities, it's creating opportunities for us as entrepreneurs, as women and minority owners of our businesses. It's creating opportunities for us to show up and show out. I think, prior to my owning my firm today, I was doing the work as a worker bee in previous environments. And I knew then that I had the capabilities of doing all of the things that I do today. And knowing that, it was just creating opportunities for me to show up and show out. And through all of this, for me, the biggest thing has been smart growth rather than wild or crazy growth. And I think when we begin to slow down and really humble ourselves in the moment, when the opportunities present themselves to us, I think it's those opportunities where we can cross-connect amongst ourselves as peers, as entrepreneurs, but also connecting back with the community and serving and doing the right things that's needed for the folks, whether it's the lack of specific amenities or the needs of transportation, housing, healthcare, education, basic things like that. And so, I just feel that I'm obligated to not only show up and show out, but represent the people that I serve, whether it's my clients or individuals within the community.
Okay, so smart growth. You guys have hit a level of success. That's why you're here today. So how do you maintain it? How do you keep it rolling?
I mean,
You give your blueprint, and share it with everybody, right?
we have to keep trucking away and ladder them out, you know what I mean? And make some assumptions, start one project, have one going, continue to work on another one. Our projects that we work on, it's crazy how the 5 that we have, they just like go in order of like one will be ready to close and then another one, something happens and then this one pulls ahead and then you just kind of have to be in many different places, but strategic at the same time, being smart and staying, we call it staying skinny, is kind of not getting too big where it's too much of a stress. If this project is delayed or if this doesn't happen, then you're in trouble. And so that you got to be smart about it too at the same time.
And piggybacking on that, it's we oftentimes joke around and say we have to stay ready so that we don't have to get ready. We not only mean that on the court for him, but for myself, it's making sure that in those down periods that you're sharpening your sword, that you're refiring yourself up in terms of the momentum that's needed once that opportunity arises down the road.
I'm always studying.
Always studying.
Always. On the planes, I'm always looking at, okay, this deal was done. How can we do this next one better, more efficient? Where do we waste? So we can do the next one better. So I'm always studying and always knowing about my projects too. And that was one of the things that really people understood, that I'm really serious about my business, is that it wasn't pushed off to my assistant. You ask me about my projects, and oh, here's my assistant. I know everything that's going on. You can ask me any questions. I know everything that's going on. I might be late on the email chains, but I know exactly what's going on all of my projects. And so you gotta stay ready, just keep studying, keep pushing.
Stay ready. That should be a hashtag, stay ready.
Stay ready.
Yeah, I think for us as a consumer product, in order for us to sustain growth, it's about listening to our customers and what do they want and how do we adapt our product for their needs. And so that's exactly what we do, is we are in the mental health communities that we serve, and we are constantly taking their feedback and iterating on the product so that we can use that product and that revenue to fuel our growth, to fuel our research and development, and to fuel our product roadmap.
Mm-hmm. I don't want to do if I woulda, coulda, shoulda, but what are some of the things that when you started in business that you felt that you should have known now that would have taken, let's say there's entrepreneurs out here right now that they could capitalize on, that you didn't know that you should have known that could help some folks that are out there that are getting close to the steps where you are now?
Good question.
Don't deplete your 401k plan trying to produce your business.
Do you want to go into that?
Not necessarily, but you know, oftentimes through working with other clients as well as just meeting a lot of folks from the community, prime example is like a lot of restaurants. There's a lot of upfront overhead, whether it's kitchen supplies, equipment, all of those various things. And both Devean and I, we've worked in those environments where we see the aptitude to exert that much energy on those types of uses or things in terms of their business getting off the ground. But the real reality, the reality behind the matter is, you know, just as somebody's a great chef, they have to have a great back office as well. And you know, going back to that smart growth is being able to leverage somebody like a Kindred Kitchen or developing, you know, these community kitchens so that there's opportunities for these smaller entrepreneurs to really focus on their craft while growing through that smart growth, as well as allowing other agencies or organizations to further support them where they're needed, and so that it's not just a takeoff of, oh, I just retired, I have some money in the bank, I'll leverage those dollars. But more so, it's the passion that's behind it that oftentimes gets in the way of people thinking with that business savviness of saying, let me utilize or leverage somebody else's dollar.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, I would look, if I started over again, I would really look into doing a little more hiring early on, because I did a lot of working in my business, not really on it. Like I was in everything. Like I was in every single part inside the business, and kind of missing out on a lot of opportunities because I'm busy doing work in the business where I could have delegated that out. So I would have probably had more help going in instead of doing a lot of the stuff that I could do on my own. That would be one of the advice, because you're the face, it's your vision, but if you're busy working on accounting and making sure everything is and sending emails, then you're really not working on the business. So that would be my advice, if you can.
Aneela?
I think for us, for myself, it's really just about focusing on the people that believe in you rather than trying to chase a no to convert it to a yes. Focus on the people that have already said yes. So if you're in a meeting trying to pitch and trying to get that check at the end of the rainbow, and they're checking their phone or they're doing, they're like, you can tell that they're not with you. Like, just end the meeting. Like, just don't let it drag on for 2 hours with questions so that they can get smarter about your business or your industry, and then you walk away with nothing, right? So like, use those clues to say, okay, they're not interested. Let's move on. Let's go find the people who are, and you focus on them, and that is how you will build your business, and that is how you will also save your own sanity, because you're not constantly trying to, kind of like soften the blow of rejection, right? Like focus on the people who already love you.
And you're not really counting on them even after you are successful with someone else to come back and see your vision. You just have to cut bait.
If they can't see the vision of what you're trying to do in the first 3 slides, like say thank you for your time and go, right? Go talk to the people who care. Because otherwise, what's the point? Like, why waste their time? Why waste your time? So I would say that, and then sort of on the 401k side, the first company I was trying to start was I quit my job in advertising, saying I'm gonna like blow this thing out of the water, but don't do that. Like keep your full-time job until you at least have customers. Also believe in yourself. Like I have a lot of self-doubt, right? And so I think that actually definitely held me back in that first company of I can't do this. So you have to find a way to surround yourself with people who are going to champion you and who are going to be there so that when you say I can't do this, they're going to remind you of that mission and they're going to remind you and they're going to keep you going. So that's what you should do.
Ms. Robinson, I hear passion that's coming from my colleague here. And I think through everything that we do, I've heard even from previous discussions this morning was, bringing that passion to the table. And because we're so passionate in what we do, it creates the fuel to want to do more and focus on meeting the needs of, our clients, the community that we serve. But that passion piece is very important. And sometimes, because we're so passionate, that creates vulnerabilities for our businesses, especially being a small business. And that's another thing that I learned getting through the business aspect of architecture is, there's a lot of developers that want to leverage the fact that you don't have a portfolio of work, it's standalone work on your own. Or they may question or utilize things of, Jamil, do you have the capacity? Well, no, because I understand who I am and whose I am, and my approach of why and what it is that I'm doing is much greater, or it's not even monetary. It's because of that passion. And I just wanted to highlight that everything that you're speaking on is what makes us who we are and how we can potentially serve the needs of our clients as well as the communities that we serve.
Okay, so let me piggyback on that. So am I hearing that pro bono is a no-no?
No. No, in some cases, yes, and in some cases, no.
Depends on who the pro bono is going to. If they can pay for it, they should not be getting it for free.
Well, Jamil had a little pro bono for me as well, We grew up together. We got into this, the developer, we get all the bills.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We got all the risks, and so I'm like, Mill, hey, let's go in this easy because if it don't go on, I'm writing all these checks, so can I get, go ahead and send me them drawings, but I'll just hold on, I'll get you later. So it does take all of us and takes some pro bono to those who deserve it.
It takes support, it takes trust, it takes knowing that if this works, it's gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's what I mean, yeah.
And he's talked me off the ledge a few times, because, it gets tough, and like, the hard part is I have a backup plan. I don't have to do this. I want to do it. I'm passionate about it, but it gets frustrating at times. I'm calling Mill. I'm done, Mill. No. I'm done. I don't have to do this. I'm done. And he's like, no. He ring me back in because it gets frustrating when you get, these blockages that happen, and you can clearly see what's going on. It gets frustrating, and you want to kind of give up at times. But then I go back and say, okay, everything that has been hard for me has been all worth it. And so that's when I kind of keep pushing and have people in my corner like Jamil. But no, that's...
Well, Jamil and I were talking beforehand, and the important thing is to really know your worth. And I think sometimes because we try to build our businesses or we're new and, you know, somebody will come to us and say, I want you to work on this project, and then undercut you. And we'll go, okay, because we're new, you know, so we're new. But you need to know your worth going into any business that you're doing, correct? And let's talk to that. That's really important. Anybody?
Well, I'm kind of, you know, in business, I kind of go into meetings and I learn more from listening. I do a lot of listening, and I listen to what you do say, and I also listen to what you don't. I'm really good at kind of shifting through that of like, he hadn't mentioned X, Y, Z yet. He hadn't said one thing about this, and this is really why we're here today. So that is, you know, one of the things that I've really learned to do well is kind of understand my worth and not really fight it, because a lot of times people, they don't see you in the same way. They think you're lesser, or they think you're not as smart.
Yeah.
And I see exactly what's going on, but I just kind of sit there and see what you're doing and go with the flow. But I definitely do know my worth, and I understand it, but people will try to push it down.
Yeah. I mean, our value, our product is, you know, you can see the price of it on our website, and it's tied to the value that we're creating in your life. And so that's it. And if you're sitting in a meeting and you feel like you're getting the feeling that that person across the table from you thinks that you're lesser than, walk away. Find the people that think that you are great and think that you are doing amazing things and are ready and willing to pay the price that you are worth, right? For your time, for your effort, for your thoughts, for your ideas, for your hard work.
Vendors, businesses of color. How hard is it to find vendors of color that you want to work with as well?
So
That gets laughter from the audience.
you know, I would say it's tough, because in my field, it seems like it's geared to eliminate a whole pool of people anyway that wouldn't qualify. You got to have this type of insurance. You got to have this much this. You got to have this much bonding. And you already know, well, these small businesses don't have that. And then I'm receiving money from government or a city that have these requirements, but I can't use these vendors. I only can use these vendors that have these boxes that you have to have checked in order. You can be very capable of doing these duties. I want to use you, but that money can't get allocated to you because you don't have these boxes that I think is very intentional on, you know, these small businesses cannot come up with these things to do. Only a certain few businesses I can use that can check these boxes that I can pay them for. So.
Is that Minnesota or is that national?
That's Minnesota.
So what does it take to be a business in Minnesota, a business of color in Minnesota? I mean, it obviously, if there are these obstacles, you have to really think outside the box constantly on how to make it happen.
Tenacity. You gotta have thick skin. You can't accept no when somebody's telling you no. Once again, having a sound plan and understanding where you're trying to go. You have to stick to that plan. And, you know, even in my environment, as Devin was mentioning earlier, is starting out, I was running and chasing all sorts of RFPs, spending half of my time throughout the month trying to go after these different projects. And it finally just dawned on me that, whoa, you need to slow down. I don't have an inner office marketing team. Where do I want to place my value? Where do I want to place my attention? A lot of times, you know, I've sat in boardrooms representing Met Council, the governor's workforce board, and a number of different environments where they talk about speed dating, connecting with all of these larger employers, and, you know, this is great. You know, it's good opportunities to intertwine and potentially land yourself on a team that wants to isolate you out of potentially 10 other you know, interview or teams. And for me, it was, you know, whoa, let's just stop here. how can I potentially be strategic? And, you know, and even in my conversations on some of the boards that I sit on, you know, I've actually responded by saying, you know, for me as an individual that lives and works in North Minneapolis, it's not speed dating. It's more like a shotgun wedding. And for me, it's don't take my time in vain. You know, these opportunities that meet, network, yeah, that's great. But if you already have a clear understanding of who your team is and who you're going into these various public or even private potential partnerships, it really has to be meaningful, and there has to be good, solid intentions and a relationship-based connection in order for me to get involved.
Anyone else? Question, and I think this is probably going to take up the last 5 minutes of this, but what would make the Twin Cities a much more attractive place for entrepreneurs of color to do business? What does it need in order to attract, retain, and refeed the infrastructure of these businesses that are entrepreneurs of color in Minnesota? We know it's tough. We've established that. What would it take? Wow. It's longer than the 5 minutes, obvious, that we have for the program, right?
I think I'm starting to see some of it. So, you know, there's META, there's NEON, there's a lot of these different, or there's the, you know, the Asian economic development, there's the minority economic development, there's the Latin American economic development. So there's all these different organizations that have been operating, and this is like kind of an outside perspective, of operating in their sphere of influence, right? And what I've seen in the last couple of months is, first of all, I didn't even know what META was until October of last year, right? And now I know all these other acronyms and all these other organizations. And to me, it seems like they're working together. And I don't know how long that's been happening for, but it seems that is what we need. But we need some of these other more quote-unquote mainstream organizations to get on this bandwagon as well, because they cannot these organizations that are supporting minority entrepreneurs cannot operate in a vacuum. We need to bridge that gap. We need to understand that we are one community, and that this like perception and this fear of lack is not reality, and then if we just all work together, we can all rise together.
Right.
And I think we just need to get over this fear, to be honest, of if I have, then you know, if you have, then I cannot have. Like, that game that we've been playing for all of these years of our lives needs to end.
I'll touch on that as well. I think in order to attract more diversity here in the state of Minnesota, in terms of entrepreneurship and opportunities, I think we need to go beyond just checking boxes to meet federal or state or even local guidelines. More specifically, when we're honestly being intentional in all of these wild mission and vision statements that we have as organizations, when we're intentional in talking about increasing women and minority participation, as well as other opportunities to find and embrace individuals' differences, because I think it's those instances where we're embracing individuals for their uniqueness and there's differences where we will find much better opportunities to become a much greater state, local connections back to communities and entrepreneurs. I think those opportunities will begin to spur. So I mentioned inclusion goals earlier. With inclusion goals, we have the ability, whether it's a state agency or local, we have the ability to begin doing an intake on our entrepreneurs and finding out where their growth and their strengths and weaknesses are. And by doing something like that, then we can begin to make a better connection with smaller entrepreneurs that are trying to make it.
Two things that I looked through the material on the plane coming in, and I just glanced through it. The two things that jumped out to me was really the home ownership from the banks and the loans lent out to minority businesses. The gap, I think it was like the increase of minority was like $2.5 million, but for whites it was 120 million. That alone right there, we can start right there, where the banking system can stop looking at color and start lending out some money and start giving the same opportunities they give everybody else, because people can see that. People can see it. I think that would be a good start.
And that is the final word. I want to thank you and thank our panelists for being here today. Thank you so much.